The Friday evening rush at Le Bernardin was in full swing, and Maya's feet were already aching. She'd been on shift since 3 in the afternoon, weaving between tables with practiced grace, balancing trays that seemed to get heavier as the hours wore on. The restaurant was one of those places where everything gleamed under soft lighting, where the silverware probably cost more than her monthly rent, and where customers spoke in hushed tones about business deals and vacation homes. Maya didn't mind the work. At 26, she'd learned to appreciate any job that paid the bills and didn't ask too many questions about her schedule. She had night classes 3 times a week, and her manager had been decent enough to work around that. Plus, the tips were good when she smiled enough and didn't let the rude comments get under her skin. Tonight felt different, though. There was a tension in the air that she couldn't quite place. The other servers kept glancing toward the entrance, and even Pierre, the head chef who never got rattled, looked stressed when she'd gone back to pick up an order. Table 12 is coming in tonight, her colleague Jessica whispered as they passed each other near the kitchen. The big one. Maya didn't have to ask who the big one was. She'd heard the name Vincent Blackwell thrown around the restaurant for the past 2 days. He was some tech billionaire who'd made his fortune before turning 35, the kind of man who appeared on magazine covers and morning talk shows. The kind of man who could buy the restaurant with his pocket change and still have enough left over for a private jet. She'd seen his type before. They came in acting like they owned the world, probably because they did own a good chunk of it. They snapped their fingers at servers, sent back food that was perfectly fine, and tipped either outrageously well or insultingly low depending on their mood. There was never any in-between with people like that. At 7:30, Vincent Blackwell arrived. Maya was refilling water glasses at table 8 when the front doors opened and he walked in with 4 other people. Everything about him screamed money, from his perfectly tailored suit to the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car. He was tall, maybe early 40s, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. The restaurant manager, Mr. Chen, practically ran to greet them. Maya had never seen the man move that fast. Within minutes, they were seated at the best table in the house, the one by the window with a view of the city lights stretching out like fallen stars. Maya wasn't assigned to that table. Thank God for small mercies. She watched from a distance as Roberto, one of the senior servers, took their orders. She could see Vincent talking loudly, laughing at his own jokes, while his guests smiled and nodded like bobbleheads. She went back to her own tables, taking orders and delivering food, trying to ignore the growing noise from table 12. Vincent's voice carried across the dining room. Other guests were starting to glance over, some looking annoyed, others curious. "Another bottle," she heard him call out. "Actually, make it 2. No, 3. We're celebrating tonight." Maya cleared plates from table 6. A sweet elderly couple who thanked her profusely and told her she had a lovely smile. It was the kind of interaction that made the job bearable. She smiled back genuinely this time and wished them a good evening. When she turned around, she nearly collided with Mr. Chen. "Maya," he said quietly, his face tight with stress, "I need you to help with table 12. Roberto can't keep up with their demands." Her stomach dropped. "Of course, Mr. Chen." She approached the table with a professional smile fixed on her face, notepad ready. Vincent was in the middle of a story, gesturing wildly with his wineglass and nearly spilling it on the white tablecloth. "And then I told him," Vincent was saying, "if you can't keep up with the market, you don't deserve to be in it. Natural selection, gentlemen. Business is war." His friends laughed on cue. Maya waited patiently at the edge of the table. It took Vincent a full 30 seconds to notice her standing there. When he didn't look at her face. He snapped his fingers twice, sharp sounds that cut through the air. "You," he said, "we need more bread. And tell the chef to send out something special. Surprise me. Price doesn't matter." "Of course, sir. Right away." Maya turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." He was looking at her now, really looking in a way that made her skin crawl. Not in a leering way exactly, but like she was something interesting he'd just noticed. Like a curious object. "You work here long?" "About 8 months, sir. You like it?" "Working here?" He leaned back in his chair, wineglass dangling from his fingers. It was a trap. She could feel it. These kinds of questions were always traps. "It's a good restaurant, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity," one of his friends chuckled. Vincent's smile widened. "Grateful? I like that. You hear that, gentlemen? Gratitude. So rare these days. He took a sip of wine. What's your name? Maya, sir. Maya, pretty name. He turned to his friends. You know what this restaurant needs? Music. Live music. This place is dead. Where's the entertainment? Mr. Chen appeared as if summoned, wringing his hand slightly. Mr. Blackwell, we don't typically have live entertainment on Friday evenings. But I can certainly arrange. What's that? Vincent pointed across the dining room. Maya's heart sank. She knew what he was pointing at even before she turned to look. The grand piano sat in the corner of the restaurant, its black surface gleaming under the soft lights. It was a beautiful instrument, a Steinway that the owner had purchased years ago. Supposedly his late wife had been a pianist and he'd bought it in her memory. Maya had never seen anyone play it. It just sat there, elegant and silent, a piece of expensive decoration. That's a piano, Vincent said, stating the obvious with the delight of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. A very expensive piano. So why isn't anyone playing it? It's primarily decorative, Mr. Blackwell, Mr. Chen explained, his voice strained. We don't have a pianist on staff currently, but I assure you, that's ridiculous. What's the point of having a piano if no one plays it? Vincent looked around the table, his eyes bright with something that looked like mischief, but felt meaner. That's the problem with this country. Everything's for show. No substance, his friends murmured agreement. Though Maya noticed one woman in the group looked uncomfortable, Vincent's eyes landed back on Maya, who was still standing there with her notepad, hoping to disappear into the floor. What about you? He said suddenly. You play piano? The question hung in the air like smoke. Every instinct told Maya to say no, to laugh it off, to escape back to the kitchen. But something in his expression told her he already knew the answer. Or thought he did. I used to study music, sir. But that was a long time ago. His grin spread wider. Perfect. Then you can play something for us. Consider it part of the service. Mr. Blackwell, I don't think... Mr. Chen started. I insist, Vincent said, pulling out his wallet. Here, $100. Just play something, anything. We want to be entertained. Maya felt her face grow hot. Around them, other diners had stopped eating to watch. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Sir, I really should get back to my tables. 200. He slapped the bills on the table. Come on, don't be shy. You said you studied music, right? So play. The trap had sprung shut and Maya was caught inside it. Maya stared at the $200 bills on the table, her throat tight. The restaurant had gone quiet in that awful way that happens when everyone's pretending not to watch something uncomfortable. Forks hovered over plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. She could feel dozens of eyes on her back. I really appreciate the offer, sir, she said, keeping her voice steady. But I need to attend to my other tables. I'm sure Mr. Chen can arrange for a professional pianist another evening. She started to turn away, hoping that would be the end of it, hoping he'd laugh it off and go back to his wine and his business talk. 300. Vincent's voice cut across the dining room. He wasn't even looking at her anymore. He was looking at his friends at the other diners, playing to an audience now. $300 to play one song. That's more than you make in a week, isn't it? He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Come on. It's easy money unless... He paused and Maya could hear the smile in his voice. Unless you lied about studying music? One of his friends laughed nervously. The woman who'd looked uncomfortable earlier was staring down at her plate. Maya turned back slowly. I didn't lie, sir. I just don't think it's appropriate for me to... 500. Vincent pulled more bills from his wallet, making a show of counting them out. $500 cash right now. All you have to do is sit down at that piano and play something. Anything, a nursery rhyme. Happy birthday. I don't care, he was grinning now, clearly enjoying himself. This was a game to him, a show. She was the entertainment, not the music. Mr. Blackwell, perhaps we should... Mr. Chen stepped forward, but his voice was weak. Maya could see the calculation in his eyes. Vincent Blackwell probably spent more in one evening than the restaurant made in a week. How far would Mr. Chen go to keep him happy? Perhaps we should let the young lady decide for herself, Vincent said smoothly. This is America. Land of opportunity. I'm offering her an opportunity. He spread the bills out on the table like a poker hand. $500 for 5 minutes of work. That's $6,000 an hour. I don't even make that much. That got a laugh from his friends. One of them, a younger guy in an expensive shirt, joined in. Come on, it'll be fun. We want to hear you play. Maya's hands were shaking. She clasped them behind her back so no one would see. Part of her wanted to walk away, to tell Vincent exactly where he could put his money, to throw her apron on the floor and leave. But she couldn't afford to lose this job. She had tuition due next month. Her little brother needed new shoes. The car was making that sound again, the one that meant expensive repairs. $500 could solve a lot of problems. But it would cost her something else, something harder to measure. Sir, I really can't. 1,000. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. Maya heard someone at another table gasp softly. Vincent was standing now, holding the money up so everyone could see it. His face was flushed from wine and the thrill of whatever game he was playing. $1,000. That's my final offer. He looked around the restaurant, addressing everyone now. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a talented musician working among us. Hiding her light under a bushel. All she has to do is play one song, and this money is hers. It wasn't about the piano anymore. It wasn't even about the money. It was about power. About Vincent proving he could make anyone do anything if he threw enough cash around. About reminding everyone in the room exactly where they stood in the world's hierarchy. Maya looked at Mr. Chen. The manager's face was a mask of professional calm, but she could read the plea in his eyes. Don't make a scene. Don't upset him. Just do it. She looked at the other diners. Some looked away when her eyes met theirs. Others watched with a mixture of pity and fascination, the way people slow down to look at car accidents. A few seemed uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, but no one said anything. No one stood up for her. She was alone in this. What's the matter? Vincent's voice had an edge to it now, a sharpness under the jovial tone. You're not too good for $1,000, are you? Because I've got to say, if you're too proud to take money for doing something you supposedly know how to do, that seems pretty stupid. Vincent, maybe we should just... The uncomfortable woman at his table started. No, I want to understand this, Vincent interrupted, his eyes fixed on Maya. You work as a waitress. You carry plates for a living. But playing piano for $1,000, that's beneath you? Help me understand the logic here. Maya's face burned. She could feel tears threatening, hot and angry behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. I think maybe she doesn't actually know how to play, the younger guy at Vincent's table said. I mean, it's one thing to say you studied music. It's another thing to actually play in front of people. You know what? Vincent sat back down, his voice taking on a mock-reasonable tone. That's probably it. She probably took a few lessons as a kid and thinks that counts as studying music. It's okay, he called out to Maya, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Nobody's going to judge you if you're not actually good at it. We just want to be entertained. The humiliation washed over her in waves. Every word he said was designed to cut, to diminish, to put her in her place. And the worst part was he was doing it with a smile. He probably thought he was being generous, offering all this money. He probably thought she should be grateful. Mr. Chen touched her elbow gently. Maya, he said quietly, maybe just try please one song, and there it was. Her manager asking her to do this. Not ordering, not quite, but asking in a way that made it clear what he expected, what he needed. The restaurant needed Vincent's business. They needed him to leave happy, to come back, to tell his rich friends about this place. What was her dignity compared to that? Maya looked at the piano across the room. She hadn't played in public since the recital, since everything fell apart. That was 4 years ago, another lifetime. Fine, she heard herself say. The word felt like glass coming out of her mouth. Vincent's face lit up. Excellent, see? That wasn't so hard. He gestured grandly toward the piano. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our entertainment for the evening. A few people clapped awkwardly. Most just watched in silence. Maya untied her apron with numb fingers and handed it to Mr. Chen. Her legs felt disconnected from her body as she walked across the dining room. The space between her table and the piano seemed to stretch on forever, every step echoing in her head. She could feel everyone watching her, judging her, pitying her. When she reached the piano, she stood there for a moment, her hand on the smooth black surface. It was a beautiful instrument. She'd noticed it her first day at the restaurant, had felt her fingers itch to touch the keys, to remember what it felt like. She'd never imagined it would be like this. Slowly, Maya sat down on the bench. She adjusted her position, muscle memory taking over. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. Behind her, Vincent called out, "Don't be nervous. We're a friendly crowd. Someone laughed. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she placed her fingers on the keys. Maya's fingers rested on the keys, cold and smooth under her touch. The restaurant was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She could feel Vincent behind her, probably still smiling. Probably already thinking about what story he'd tell his friends later about the waitress he made play piano for $1,000. She took one more breath. Then she pressed down on the first key. The note rang out clear and pure. Then another. And another. She started with something soft, almost hesitant. A simple melody that floated through the air like a question. Her fingers moved carefully at first, testing the instrument, remembering the feel of it. The piano was perfectly tuned, responsive. Every touch produced exactly the sound she intended. Behind her, she heard Vincent shift in his chair. He was probably getting impatient, expecting some clumsy rendition of Chopsticks or Mary Had a Little Lamb, something he could laugh about. Maya's fingers pressed harder. The melody grew stronger. She'd planned to play something simple, something safe. Get through it, take the money, go back to work. But as her hands moved across the keys, something shifted inside her. 4 years of carrying plates and biting her tongue. 4 years of yes, sir, and right away. Ma'am. 4 years of swallowing her dreams and pretending they didn't matter. Her fingers flew into a run of notes, fast and precise, climbing up the keyboard like stairs. This wasn't simple anymore. This was Rachmaninoff, one of the hardest pieces she'd ever learned. The one she was supposed to play at her graduation recital before everything fell apart. The music poured out of her, each note crisp and deliberate. Her left hand laid down a foundation of deep rolling chords while her right hand danced over the melody. The two parts wove together like a conversation, like an argument, like a prayer. Someone gasped. Maya didn't stop. She leaned into the music, her whole body moving with it. This was what people didn't understand about piano. It wasn't just your fingers. It was your arms, your back, your core. You had to feel it in your bones, had to let it move through you like electricity. The piece built and built, each phrase more intense than the last. Her hands crossed over each other, reaching for notes at opposite ends of the keyboard. Octave runs thundered under her left hand while her right hand picked out a melody so delicate it was almost heartbreaking. The dining room had completely disappeared. There was no Vincent, no Mr. Chen, no other diners watching. There was only the music and the feeling of coming home to something she'd locked away for too long. She transitioned without stopping, moving from Rachmaninoff into something else. Jazz, a standard her father used to play when she was little before he died. But she wasn't just playing it straight. She was improvising, letting her fingers find new patterns, new harmonies, taking the familiar melody and breaking it apart and rebuilding it into something that was hers alone. Her hands moved faster. The music swelled until it filled every corner of the restaurant, bouncing off the walls, claiming the space. This wasn't background music. This wasn't decoration. This was a force of nature. She could feel tears on her face now, but she didn't stop to wipe them away. Every emotion she'd buried, every moment of frustration and exhaustion and barely held together hope, it all came out through her fingers. The keys became a voice, her voice, saying everything she'd never been able to say out loud. I am not invisible. I am not less than you. I am not what you think I am. The jazz melody twisted into something darker, more complex. Minor chords crashed like waves. Then it lifted again, finding light in unexpected places. Her right hand traced a pattern so quick it almost sounded like two people playing. The tempo shifted, slowed, became something tender and aching. Behind her, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Not the awkward silence from before, but something different, something breathless. Maya brought the piece to its climax, both hands working together in perfect synchronization, building a wall of sound that seemed impossible for one person to create. The piano sang under her touch, every note exactly where it needed to be. Loud, then soft, then loud again. A conversation with herself, with God, with everyone who'd ever underestimated her. And then gradually she brought it down. The music softened, gentled like a storm passing. The melody from the beginning came back but changed now. Wiser maybe, sadder, more true. The final notes hung in the air like soap bubbles, delicate and shimmering. Maya held the last chord, letting it fade naturally until there was nothing left but the ghost of sound and her hands still resting on the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was absolute. Then someone started clapping. Not the polite, obligatory applause you give because you're supposed to. Real applause. Thunderous. Maya turned on the bench, blinking, coming back to reality. The entire restaurant was on its feet. People were standing at their tables, clapping, some of them with tears streaming down their faces. An elderly woman near the window had both hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide. A man in a business suit was wiping his eyes with his napkin. Mr. Chen looked like he'd seen a ghost. His mouth was open, his hands frozen in mid-clap, and Vincent. Vincent was still sitting at his table. His face had gone pale. The smug smile was completely gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shock. His friends were applauding, looking between him and Maya with expressions ranging from amazement to discomfort. But Vincent just sat there, his $1,000 still on the table, staring at Maya like he was seeing her for the first time. Maya stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She wasn't sure if it was from the performance or the emotion or just the sheer overwhelming reality of what had just happened. An older man with silver hair made his way toward the piano. He was well-dressed, distinguished-looking, and crying openly. He didn't seem embarrassed about it at all. "Excuse me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I have to ask. Where did you study?" Maya's throat was tight. "Manhattan School of Music, but I didn't finish." "You didn't finish," the man repeated like he couldn't quite believe it. "May I ask why not?" The story came out before Maya could stop it. Maybe it was the adrenaline or the music still humming in her veins or just being so tired of holding everything in. "My parents died in a car accident during my final year. I have a younger brother. He was 12. Someone had to take care of him and I was all he had. So I left school and got a job. Then another job. Then this one." The man's face crumpled. "What's your name?" "Maya Johnson." "Maya Johnson," he said, testing the name. "I'm Daniel Weiss. I used to be the director at Juilliard. I've heard thousands of pianists in my life. Professionals, prodigies. People who've dedicated their entire existence to music." He paused, his voice breaking. "What you just played. The technique, the emotion, the pure artistry. My dear girl, that was extraordinary." Another woman approached, younger, maybe in her 40s, with sleek black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She was holding out a business card. "Forgive me for being forward," she said, "but I'm Diane Chen. I'm a music producer. I work with Sony Classical. We've been looking for a pianist for a major recording project for 6 months. We've auditioned hundreds of people, and none of them, not one, could play like that." Maya took the card with numb fingers. This didn't feel real. None of this felt real. "I know this is overwhelming," Diane continued, "but I need you to call me. Tomorrow. Please, we need to talk." Mr. Chen appeared at Maya's elbow, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked at her with something like respect. "Maya," he said quietly, "I had no idea. I should have." He stopped, shook his head. "You have a position here as long as you want it, and not as a waitress." The applause was dying down now, but people kept approaching. Compliments washed over her in waves. An elderly couple wanted to shake her hand. A teenager asked if she gave lessons. Through it all, Maya kept catching glimpses of Vincent at his table. He still hadn't moved. Maya's hands were still trembling as she shook hands with what felt like half the restaurant. The business cards were piling up. Daniel Weiss was talking about connections at the conservatory. Diane Chen was already discussing recording schedules. It was overwhelming in a way that felt like standing in an ocean wave, knowing it could either lift you up or pull you under. Through the crowd, she saw Vincent finally stand up. His face was unreadable now, carefully blank. He said something to his friends, then started walking toward the exit. For a moment, Maya thought he was just going to leave without a word, and part of her felt relieved. But then he stopped, turned around, and walked toward her instead. The crowd around Maya seemed to sense something and parted slightly. Vincent stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets. Up close, Maya could see that he looked shaken. The cocky confidence from earlier had evaporated completely. He started, then stopped, cleared his throat. I didn't know. Maya waited. She wasn't going to make this easier for him. "I apologize," Vincent said, the words coming out stiff and formal. "I was out of line. I shouldn't have. The way I acted was inappropriate. It was the kind of apology that lawyers probably wrote. Careful, covering all the bases, admitting just enough without really admitting anything. You humiliated me," Maya said quietly, "in front of everyone. For fun." Vincent flinched like she'd slapped him. I know I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry that I turned out to be good at it? Maya surprised herself with her own directness, but the music was still humming in her veins, making her braver than usual. If I'd played badly, you would have laughed. You would have felt justified, but I played well, and now you're embarrassed. One of Vincent's friends, the younger guy who'd joined in earlier, stepped forward. Look, we were just having fun. You got $1,000 out of it, so— Thomas, shut up, Vincent said sharply. He looked back at Maya. He's wrong. There's no excuse. I treated you like you weren't a person, like you were there for my entertainment. He pulled the money from his pocket, the $1,000 he'd waved around earlier. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please take this. You earned it. Maya looked at the money. A week ago, even a day ago, she would have taken it without question. $1,000 was $1,000. But now, looking at those bills, all she could think about was what they represented, the price Vincent thought he could put on her dignity. Keep it, she said. I don't want your money. Maya, I said keep it. Her voice was firm. You wanted a show. You got one. But I'm not your performer. I'm not your entertainment. And I'm not for sale. She turned away, back to Daniel and Diane, back to the people who'd seen her as a musician, not a joke. Behind her, she heard Vincent's footsteps retreating, finally leaving. Jessica appeared at her elbow, holding Maya's phone. Girl, you need to see this. What? Someone recorded you. It's already online. Jessica's eyes were huge. Maya, it's everywhere. Maya took the phone. The video was shaky, clearly filmed on someone's cell phone, but the audio was surprisingly clear. She watched herself sitting at the piano, saw her hands moving across the keys, heard the music pouring out. The video had been posted 20 minutes ago. It already had 50,000 views. Oh my God, Maya whispered. Look at the comments, Jessica said. Maya scrolled. The comments were flooding in faster than she could read them. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Who is she? That's a Steinway Grand, and she's playing it like it's an extension of her soul. The emotion. I'm crying at my desk. Why is she working as a waitress when she plays like this? And then she saw it. A comment with thousands of likes already. Anyone else notice the guy at the table who made her play? What a jerk. She didn't want to do it, and he basically forced her. You can see it in her face, another comment, more recent. That's Vincent Blackwell, the tech guy. Of course it is. Rich people think they can buy anything. Maya felt sick. She hadn't wanted this to become a thing. She'd just wanted to play and be done with it. But it was already too late. The video was being shared across every platform. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. People were screen recording it, reposting it, adding their own commentary. By the time Maya's shift was supposed to end, the video had 3 million views. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friend requests from people she'd never met, messages from strangers, news outlets asking for interviews. A reporter from the local news station showed up at the restaurant, camera crew in tow. Mr. Chen had to turn them away. Not tonight, he told them firmly. Give her some space, but there was no space. The internet didn't understand space. Someone found her old profile from the Manhattan School of Music. Screenshots of her student performances started circulating. People dug up the newspaper article about her parents' accident, the one that mentioned she'd had to leave school to care for her brother. Single mother of a teenage boy shows incredible strength. One post read. That wasn't even accurate, Maya thought with exhausted frustration. He was her brother, not her son. But the story had already taken on a life of its own, and accuracy was apparently optional. By midnight, someone had created a fundraising page. Help Maya return to music school. Maya hadn't asked for it, hadn't approved it, but there it was, with thousands of dollars already donated. She sat in the empty restaurant after closing, her phone face down on the table because she couldn't look at it anymore. Mr. Chen brought her tea. You okay? He asked. Maya laughed, but it came out wrong. I don't know. I don't know what just happened. You played piano, Mr. Chen said simply. You played beautifully. The rest is just noise. But it wasn't just noise. The next morning, Maya woke up to find the video had 20 million views. 20 million. The fundraising page had reached $100,000. Her phone had died overnight from all the notifications, and there was an email from Vincent Blackwell's office. Maya stared at the subject line for a long time before opening it. Formal apology and proposal. The email was long. It started with another apology, more detailed this time. Vincent wrote about growing up with privilege, about never having to think about how his actions affected other people, about seeing Maya's performance and realizing how deeply he'd misjudged her. Misjudged a lot of things, actually. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," the email said. "I don't deserve it. But I want to do something meaningful. Not for publicity, not to make myself feel better, but because it's the right thing to do." He proposed creating a scholarship fund, full tuition, living expenses, and instrument access for students from underprivileged backgrounds at major music schools. Maya's mother's name would be on it. He'd commit $5 million to start, with more each year. "I know money doesn't fix what I did," the email continued. "I know I can't undo that moment, but maybe I can help make sure other talented people don't have to choose between their dreams and survival. If you're willing to work with me on this, I'd be honored. If not, I understand. Either way, I'm moving forward with the fund." Maya read the email 3 times. She didn't know what to feel. Anger was still there, sitting in her chest like a stone. But something else was there too. Something that felt like possibility. Her phone rang. "Daniel Weiss." "Maya, I hope I'm not calling too early," he said. "I've been talking to some people at the conservatory. We want to offer you a full scholarship to complete your degree, housing included, and we can work around your schedule with your brother." Before Maya could respond, another call came through. Diane Chen. "I'm serious about the recording project," Diane said when Maya called her back. "Sony's interested." "Very interested. We're talking a real album. Distribution, marketing, the works. And Maya, the video got the attention of the New York Philharmonic. They want to talk to you about a guest performance." Maya sat on her brother's bed where she'd fallen asleep in her uniform the night before. He was at school, thank God, missing this chaos. She looked around their small apartment. The water stain on the ceiling she'd been meaning to report. The second-hand furniture. The stack of bills on the kitchen counter. Yesterday she'd been a waitress trying to make rent. Today she was viral. Tomorrow she might be a pianist again. Her phone buzzed with another notification. The fundraising page had hit $200,000. Someone had edited together a video comparing her performance to famous concert pianists. A classical music magazine was calling her the discovery of the decade. And somewhere in Manhattan, Vincent Blackwell was probably dealing with his own notifications. Maya had seen the articles. "Tech billionaire humiliates waitress" was trending. His company's PR team was in crisis mode. Twitter had canceled him by breakfast. Part of Maya felt satisfied by that. He'd earned it. But another part, the part that had been raised to be kind, to find grace even when it was hard, wondered if people could really change. She looked at Vincent's email again. At the scholarship fund proposal, at his offer to put her mother's name on it, maybe they could. Or maybe she just wanted to believe they could. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. "Is this Maya Johnson?" a professional voice asked. "I'm calling from Carnegie Hall." 6 months later, Maya stood backstage at Carnegie Hall trying to remember how to breathe. Through the heavy curtain she could hear the murmur of the crowd filling the seats. 2,800 people. She'd looked up the capacity earlier, then immediately regretted it. 2,800 strangers waiting to hear her play. "You're going to be amazing," her brother Chris said, adjusting his tie. He'd grown 2 inches in the past 6 months and finally looked like the 15-year-old he was instead of the 12-year-old she still saw in her mind. "Seriously, Maya, you've got this. What if I mess up?" Maya whispered. "What if my hands freeze? What if—" "Then you'll be human," Chris interrupted. "And humans make mistakes. But you won't mess up. You never do." Maya wished she had his confidence. The past 6 months had been a blur of activity that still didn't feel entirely real. The scholarship to Manhattan School of Music had come through exactly as Daniel Weiss promised. She'd moved back into student housing, this time with a small apartment that had room for Chris. The school had been understanding about her situation, working around her schedule so she could still take care of her brother. The recording contract with Sony was real too. The album was already in production. 3 tracks finished, 5 more to go. Diane Chen kept calling it groundbreaking and genre-defying, which sounded impressive but mostly made Maya nervous about living up to expectations. And then there was the scholarship fund. Vincent had actually done it. The announcement came 2 weeks after that night at the restaurant. $5 million with a commitment of $2 million more annually. The Rebecca Johnson Memorial Scholarship for underprivileged musicians named after Maya's mother. Full tuition, instrument access, living expenses, and mentorship for 20 students per year at schools across the country. Maya had cried when she saw the announcement, not because of Vincent, but because of her mother's name in print. Because somewhere, other kids like her wouldn't have to choose between music and survival. She'd agreed to meet with Vincent once on neutral ground with Daniel Weiss present. It was awkward and tense. Vincent looked different. Tired, maybe. More aware of the space he took up in a room. He didn't make jokes or small talk. He listened more than he spoke. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he'd said, the same words from his email. "I just wanted you to know that I meant what I wrote. This fund isn't about publicity. My name isn't on it. Your mother's is, and it's going to keep running long after people forget about me." Maya had nodded. "I need you to understand something. What you did that night, it didn't just hurt my feelings. It represented something bigger. The way people with power treat people without it. The assumptions you make about who matters and who doesn't." "I know," Vincent had said quietly. "I'm learning that slowly, probably too slowly. But I'm trying." She hadn't forgiven him. Not completely. Maybe she never would. But she'd accepted that people were complicated. That someone could do something terrible and still choose to do something good afterward. That growth was possible, even if it was messy and incomplete. A stage manager appeared beside her. "5 minutes, Ms. Johnson." Maya's stomach flipped. Chris squeezed her hand. "Mom and Dad would be so proud," he said softly. "You know that, right?" Maya blinked back tears. She couldn't cry right now. She'd ruin her makeup, and more importantly, she needed to see the keys clearly. "Go find your seat," she told Chris. "Front row, right where I can see you." He grinned and disappeared into the wings. Daniel Weiss was sitting out there too, and Diane Chen and Mr. Chen from the restaurant who'd closed Le Bernardin for the night so his entire staff could attend. Jessica had been texting her excited messages all day, and somewhere in the audience, in a seat toward the back that his assistant had purchased quietly, Vincent Blackwell was sitting too. Maya had seen his name on the attendance list. Part of her wanted to feel angry about it, but mostly she just felt tired of being angry. He'd bought a ticket like everyone else. He had a right to be there. The stage manager returned. "It's time." Maya walked onto the stage, and the applause washed over her like a wave. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces, which helped with the nerves. She found Chris in the front row, his phone already out to record. She smiled despite herself. The piano waited for her at center stage. Another Steinway grand, even more beautiful than the one at the restaurant. Maya sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The audience quieted. For a moment, Maya just sat there, feeling the weight of everything that had led to this point. The loss of her parents, the years of struggling, that night at the restaurant when she'd been humiliated in front of strangers, the video going viral, the opportunities that followed. All of it had brought her here, to this stage, to this moment. She took a breath and began to play. This time she'd chosen the piece carefully. Not Rachmaninoff, though she loved it. Not jazz standards, though they'd always be part of her. Instead, she played something she'd composed herself. Something that told her story without words. The grief and the hope, the anger and the grace, the struggle and the survival. The music started soft, almost fragile. A simple melody that represented everything she'd lost. Then it grew, became stronger, more complex. Harmonies layered on harmonies. The rhythm shifted, became urgent, alive. This was the fight to keep going when everything felt impossible. Then came the chaos. Discordant notes crashing together, representing that night at the restaurant. The humiliation and the anger and the fear. Her hands pounded the keys, forcing the audience to feel the discomfort, to sit with it. But slowly, gradually, the chaos resolved. The melody returned, changed now. Wiser, harder won. It climbed higher, reached further, found joy in unexpected places. This was the music of second chances and new beginnings, of finding out that endings could also be starting points. The final movement was pure celebration. Her hands danced across the keyboard, pulling out every technique she'd ever learned. Octave runs and trills and arpeggios that sparkled like light on water. The music filled Carnegie Hall, reached every corner, touched every person listening. And then, like the end of a long journey, it came to rest. The final chord hung in the air, sustaining until it faded into silence. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then the audience exploded. The applause was deafening. People were on their feet immediately, shouting and cheering. Chris was crying, not even trying to hide it. Daniel Weiss was standing with his hand over his heart. Maya could see people wiping their eyes all through the crowd. She stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. When she looked toward the back of the hall, she caught a glimpse of Vincent. He was standing like everyone else, clapping, but his face was serious. When their eyes met across the distance, he nodded once. Not a gesture of congratulation exactly. More like acknowledgement. Like he understood finally what he'd almost taken from the world that night. Maya nodded back. Then she turned away, back to the people who mattered. Back to her brother and her mentors and her friends. Back to the life she was building, note by note. Backstage afterward, the crowd was overwhelming. People wanted photos and autographs and interviews. Someone from the New York Times was asking about her next performance. A conductor from the London Symphony wanted to discuss a collaboration. It was too much, but in the best possible way. Through the chaos, Maya felt her phone buzz, a text from an unknown number. Thank you for the music, and thank you for the lesson. I'm working on being better. It's harder than I thought, but I'm not giving up. The scholarship fund approved its first class of students today. 20 kids who won't have to make the choice you made. Your mother would be proud. I hope someday you can be proud too. VB. Maya read it twice, then put her phone away. She didn't respond. Maybe she would later, or maybe she wouldn't. That wasn't what mattered right now. What mattered was Chris trying to describe her performance to someone while waving his hands dramatically. What mattered was Diane Chen discussing recording schedules, and Daniel Weiss introducing her to important people. What mattered was the fact that tomorrow morning, she'd wake up and go to class at the conservatory, that she'd practice for hours because she wanted to, not because she was trying to escape something, that she'd pick Chris up from school and help him with homework and make dinner in their small but safe apartment. What mattered was that she was a musician again, not despite everything that had happened, but because of it. Someone asked her what she was going to play at her next concert. Maya thought about it, smiling. Something new, she said. I'm always working on something new. Because that was the thing about music, about life, really. You could play the same notes you'd always played, or you could find new ones. You could let the hard moments define you, or you could transform them into something beautiful. You could stay angry forever, or you could choose each day to move forward. Maya chose to move forward, and somewhere in the city, a scholarship fund bearing her mother's name was giving 20 other people the chance to do the same. That night at the restaurant had tried to make her small, had tried to put her in a box labeled less than, but she'd broken out of that box with music and determination and the refusal to let anyone else define her worth. She was Maya Johnson. She was a pianist. She was a sister and a